We're continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, the halachot of Kriyat Sefer Torah, and Siman Kuf Mem, and we are up to Sif Gimel, and Daf Chaf Gimel, Amud Aleph of the regular prints of Mishna Berura. And Maran writes, Ha'oleh likro b'Torah. This is a very common question and an important halacha. If you are shown a certain place in the Torah, and then you say your bracha, and turns out that they showed you the wrong page or the wrong paragraph, do you have to make another bracha? Well, you said the bracha on that part, or maybe you said the bracha on the whole. You're having in mind the stam da'at maybe covers everywhere in the Torah that's going to be read for you. Which one is it? And this becomes two shitot in Shulchan Aruch in Maran. Ha'oleh likro b'Torah ve'her'u lo makom sh'tzarich likrot. When they showed you a place that you're supposed to read, beracha la Torah, you already said your bracha, ve'hitchil likrot, and you start reading, or even before you start and you realize, oops, it's the wrong paragraph. Hiskirush parasha acheret tzarich likrot. It's a different parasha that they showed you. Ve'gala la sefer Torah le'makom sh'tzarich likrot bo, and you turned the page to where you're supposed to actually read it. Yesh omrim sheno tzarich lachzor u'barech. There are those who say you don't have to go back and say the bracha. Yesh omrim shetzarich, and there are those who say you have to go back and say a new bracha now that you are reading the right page in the Chumash. Now, regularly speaking, the in Kilale Hora'ah of Maran Shulchan Aruch, when Maran brings two opinions and he formats it in Yesh Omrim veYesh Omrim. There are those who say like this, and there are those who say like that. The general understanding is that Maran wants to indicate that the latter is the main opinion. La halacha, the halacha keyesh batra. Halacha is like the second Yesh Omrim that Maran brings at last. So we'll see that Mishna Berura actually also concurs with that the majority of the poskim hold like the second opinion over here, that you would have to go back and say another bracha. Now, the reason of those who say you don't have to say another bracha is because mistama dato al kol parashiyot Torah munachat lefanav. When you say bracha, you're saying bracha on the Torah. All the parashiyot that are there is included in the mindset of the person that says the bracha. And those who disagree with that, they believe that people do not have that in mind. You see something that they show you, and your thoughts are that I'm going to be reading this parasha, and therefore, if the parasha that I'm supposed to read is a few pages later, I bichlal did not have in mind that I'm covering a few columns of the Sefer Torah, certainly not the column that's not in front of me. So therefore, you would have to go back and say another bracha in such a case. Now, if they showed you the right parasha, but then before you started the reading, you realized that the Sefer Torah is pasul. So in other words, there wasn't the issue of showing you the wrong place. You saw the right place, but then you noticed that there's something missing in the Sefer Torah. It's a ta'ut, and it would be pasul, right? So what happens then? If you take another Sefer Torah out, and now you open it, and he already said the bracha, he didn't talk in between. So Kaf HaChaim writes that in this Manda Amar that holds, you have to say another bracha when you saw the wrong place. Says even according to this Manda Amar, you don't have to go back and say another bracha, because here in this case you saw the Bishat bracha. In the time that you said the bracha, you had the kavanah for the right parasha in the Chumash, and even though that happens to be a technical problem that the Sefer Torah was pasul, you said it on this parasha, thinking that you're going to say a bracha on this parasha in a kosher Sefer Torah, so therefore you're covered in that way. That's what both Kaf HaChaim and Chacham Obadia they paskin like that. And again, even though that many people would think otherwise, that because he's switching a Sefer Torah, he should be saying a new bracha. In this case, they have this leniency that you don't have to repeat the bracha over again. וכתבו האחרונים, says the Mishnah Berura, דנוהגין למעשה כשאומרים הזה. As we mentioned earlier, Mishnah Berura concurs with the last Yesh Omrim, that you would have to go back and say another bracha. Now, this is not necessarily, even though the Maran says it, Mishnah Berura says it as well, but the Kaf HaChaim brings those who disagree that you don't have to say a bracha even in this case, and says the Kaf HaChaim, well, it's at the end of the day is safek brachot la'akil. We are always concerned, Kaf HaChaim specifically is very concerned about an unnecessary bracha, because Maran Shulchan Aruch in Siman Resh Vav paskins like the Rambam against the Tosafot and Rosh, that an unnecessary bracha is a full-fledged isur d'oraita of a transgression of a biblical prohibition. Now, the Tosafot and Rosh hold that when you mention Hashem's name in context of blessing, in context of praise, that's only a rabbinic prohibition. It's not a disgrace to Hashem's name. You're saying it after all in context of blessing. So therefore, it's a Yisur D'Rabbanan. Ramah paskins like that. But the Rambam, Shulchan Aruch following the Rambam, they are of the opinion that even in the context of bracha, if you are mentioning Hashem's name with not enough of necessity, then you are transgressing lo tisa et shem Hashem Elokecha lashav. You're mentioning it in vain, and therefore it's a Yisur D'Oraita. So hence, the Sephardi poskim in general and Kaf HaChaim in specific is very concerned about safek brachot la'akel. And here is one such case that he says you should not go back and say the bracha again. And Harav Ovadia also goes with this as well. This in other words, even though that the dot of Maran Shulchan Aruch is to say the bracha, Omrim safek brachot lahakel afilu neged Maran. This general rule of being very concerned not to say extra brachot even supersedes the psak of Maran Shulchan Aruch. It's a very strong concern that even though that we, the Sfaradim, usually go with the Mechaber, with the Shulchan Aruch, in such case that is in a concern of brachot la'akel, of bracha l'batala rather, bracha she'en asricha, we override basically the psak of Shulchan Aruch and we say don't say bracha because we're concerned this may be a bracha in vain, and therefore that would be the psak, even though the Mishnah Berura and Shulchan Aruch seem to paskin that you would say a bracha. So halacha l'maaseh, even though that they showed you the wrong place, and now you have to turn the page, especially if it's on the same page, for sure, then you would not go back and say another bracha. Mishnah Berura says it doesn't make a difference really if the parasha that they showed you is a completely different parasha, or even if it's in the same seder, in the same parasha of the week, but you have to turn the Sefer Torah, turn the page, and roll the Sefer Torah to the right place. In any case, you have to go back and say the bracha, because for sure you did not have da'at, you didn't have your mind on something that's not in front of you. So Mishnah Berura acknowledges here that something that's in front of you in the same page, even according to the Machmirim, you would not say a new bracha. If it's on the same page, even for Ashkenazim, it would be good. But again, for the Sfaradim, according to what we just mentioned in the name of the Kaf HaChaim, and Harvadia also goes with that, we don't say bracha even if it's on other pages and a different parasha. In any case, you would not make another bracha. V'sharei achronim, v'mekel shelo lachazor ulvarech b'im hayam hakol shelo be'oto seder. If you are lenient, says the Mishnah Berura, and you don't want to say bracha, given that it's in the same parashat of the week, what they showed you and what they should have showed you, it would be also okay. You have what to rely on. En mochin be'ado, you don't stop him. Yesh lo al ma lismoch, he has what to rely on. Ve'im parasha zu hareuya lo haya gam ken megule lefanav be'et she'eru lo. What we spoke out, he says here that if the parasha that he should have read is in the same page, the same column, and that is open, or in the next column, but it's open. There's Ashkenazi Sefer Torah, especially that when you open, they have 2 or 3 of the columns of the Sefer Torah open. So if it was in front of you when you said the bracha, then says the Mishna Berura, in that case, Hiskima Taz v'Sha'ar Ephraim, they don't have to go back as so. Even according to the Mishna Berura, even according to Ashkenazim, who are more stringent, that you would have to make a new bracha if it was not where they showed you. If it's open in front of you when they showed you this column, and it's in the next column, but it was open also when you said the bracha, in that case you don't have to go back and say another bracha. Even if they showed you the last week's parasha, but it's open the next week's parasha also, you don't have to go back and say another bracha. In such a case, says the Mishna Berura, because in this week's parasha also was open in the next column or in the same column. In that case, we don't say another bracha. Doesn't make a difference if it's in this column that they showed you or the next column, as long as the columns were both open in front of you. It's considered that you said the bracha on whatever is open in front of you, and that would be just fine. Says the Mishna Berura, Gam en chiluk ben im hamakom she'eru lo haya lemala והמקום הראוי לקרוא למטה, או שהראו למטה והמקום הראוי למעלה. Doesn't make a difference if in the same column it was the place that they showed you was on top and you should have really done on the bottom, or even the other way around, that they showed you on the bottom and you should really do on the top. Doesn't make a difference. In all those cases, what you have in front of you is what you're saying the bracha on. That's the very least that the Mishna Berura agrees with the Taz and the rest of the poskim who are mekel, who are lenient in this scenario. Hence, for the Ashkenazim, turns out to be that if it is part of what was open in front of you when you said the bracha, then you don't say another bracha. If it wasn't, then you have to roll the Sefer Torah, then you should say another bracha, for sure, according to the Mishna Berura. If you didn't say a bracha, and it was in the same parasha of that week, you have what to rely on. But according to the Sephardim, regardless of if you have to turn it, don't have to turn it, is in this week's parasha, is not in this parasha, in any case, we don't say another bracha. When the person already has said the bracha, you turn it to where you have to turn it, and you continue reading from there without repeating the bracha. Says the Shulchan Aruch. This is now a new Siman Kuf Mem Aleph, the halachot of the person that reads and the person that helps him read the psukim of the Torah when he's up there by the bima. Sarich likrot meumad. First and foremost, you cannot be sitting and reading the Torah. The Torah has to be read for the kavod of the tzibur. You have to be standing. You can't be sitting and reading it. You can't even lean on the bima or on the wall next to you or on a pillar next to you. You cannot do that. Why? We have explained this many times, that halachically speaking, when you lean your weight on something, that now you're not supported by yourself, your weight is supported by something else, that is halachically considered sitting. And vice versa. Even if you're in a position of sitting, but you are controlling your weight yourself, you're supporting yourself, that if they pull out the chair from underneath you, you'll stay standing, so to speak. The fact that you look like a 90-degree sitting does not make it that you're sitting. That is considered you're standing. And hence, you'll find some people, when they want to be halachically standing, they'll do a little hidur, which they're supporting their entire weight themselves. That's considered standing. And like we said before, Kaf HaChaim writes that if you have to be sitting and saying, for instance, Nefilat HaPayim of Le David, and someone is davening behind you, you just lean on the stender in front of you without looking like you're moving, so it doesn't disturb him. And at the same time, halachically would be considered that you are sitting. Hence, in any scenario that you should be standing halachically, like such case of reading the Torah in public, you cannot be leaning your weight on the bima or on a stender or on a pole or on the wall. That's the basic halacha. Ela imken hu bal basar. Unless you have exception that the person that is extremely overweight and it will be very difficult for them to stand on their own kochot. For that, we have a leniency that, if he's getting the aliyah and he's reading, he could be leaning to make it possible for himself to stand. And of course, that would be extended to other people who can't stand easily. They have a broken foot. Again, that's a person that cannot do it will have that heter. It's not asur to now get an aliyah because he's on crutches and he has to support his weight with something else. That would still be fine. So it says the Ramah, v'chen hachazan hakoreh tzarich lamod, and it's not just the person that gets the aliyah, but the chazan, that's the Baal Koreh, also has to be standing and reading it, supporting his own weight, not sitting down. Says the Mishna Berura, Sarich likrod meumad, hakriyah shkorim betzibur. The public reading is not that you have to read the Torah always standing. You're doing Shnai Mikra, you have to stand. No, you can do Shnai Mikra sitting. But when you do it betzibur, when it's the function of tzibur, then for the kavod of the tzibur, you have to be standing up. This is learned from the Varim in the beginning in Perek Hey, V'ata po amod imadi. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, you stand here with me. So whenever you are imadi, whenever you're with me, you're reading the Torah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you will be standing. Mashmat afilu Hashem itbarach, hamakre leMoshe, that even Hashem, who was makre, who was saying the Torah to Moshe, was kaviyachol, standing, whatever that means, figuratively, and therefore we stand as well. Ve'imken kol shken shkol Yisrael hayu omdim. Definitely, all the Yidden were standing by Matan Torah, because there's a certain awe and reverence for giving of the Torah. Hence, they were standing. Baruch hu anoten ota. The Gemara says that just like the Torah was given with reverence and a certain level of healthy fear, we also have to deal with it in the same way. Now, how about if the windows of the Beit Knesset are in the western side, and the person that's reading the Torah needs to see them, right? You need the natural light. Imagine if you have a short in your electricity and you need to use natural lights and the windows are on the other side, in the western side. In that case, you could even do it standing not to the Hechal, but standing back to the Hechal, facing the Ma'arav, because again, you have to read the Torah, even though generally speaking, we stand facing the Aron Kodesh, facing the Mizrach in the United States, in places that Yerushalayim is to their west, to their east rather, we stand towards the east, towards Yerushalayim usually, but if you need be, you could stand facing to Ma'arav as well, if that's the only way that you could see the words of the Torah and read them. Now, Kafachayim writes that a person that goes up to the Torah, part of the reverence that we have for the Torah is that you have to be dressed properly, and so therefore you find that even in Mincha of Shabbat, if someone has a short sleeve, first of all, to be dressed like that on Shabbat afternoon. Once I have the mic, I could say this, that people have this like more casual thing on Shabbat afternoon. Chas v'shalom. Shabbat afternoon is the holiest part of Shabbat. The Zohar Kadosh calls it Et Rava Deravin, is the highest level of Sha'at Ratzon. The Ptichat Echal of Mincha of Shabbat is one of the highest levels of Sha'at Ratzon, and same is with the entire Shabbat afternoon. So if anything, even if you don't wear a tie and we're dressed up on Shabbat morning, you most definitely should do that on Shabbat afternoon. But nevertheless, you find someone that's hot and is wearing short sleeves, when he gets an aliyah, right away they cover their body and their arms with a talit, is because of this. And says the Kaf HaChaim, also part of it is that in Shabbat morning or in Shacharit of Monday, Thursday, when you get an aliyah to the Torah, you cover your head with the talit properly. That's part of the ema of saying the Birkat Torah as well. So says the Mishnah Berura, finishing the seif over here, unless the exception that the Shulchan Aruch gave us was a person that's Baal Basar. If he is heavy set and overweight, then it's very difficult for him to stand. We allow him to lean. Same is for a person that's sick, or zaken, or someone that's elderly, very elderly. They cannot really stand without leaning on something. That would be mutar as well. Don't drop yourself completely on the bima or on a stender. Do the minimum that is a necessity. This way it shows that still you are trying your best to respect the Sefer Torah by doing the minimum, leaning, not just dropping yourself completely on something that you're laying on. So says the Mishnah Berura, don't do it as much as leaning the entire weight on it in a scenario, in a way that if it would be taken away from you, you would right away fall down. And if you can't, mamash cannot do without that, and you really need support, mutar gambaze. Even that is mutar. Now, we already explained that if you're leaning your weight on something that's not considered standing at all, and that's why he says don't do that. But if you can't do without that, you could even do that, which means you could even lean your whole weight on the support that you're having, if you cannot do otherwise. Now, if a person can't even stand in that way, right? Chas v'shalom, someone that is on wheelchair because they lost a leg or two legs, chas v'shalom, bar minan, what do? Can we say that they are absolved from this and they could just sit and do it the way they can? Or do we say that they're not allowed to be shaliach tzibur, at least to read the Torah, right? So it's brought in the name of Chacham Obadiah that he was stringent, actually, that a person that is bound to wheelchair should not be a Baal Koreh for the Sefer Torah, because he cannot stand up. The Chole and Zaken that the poskim allow for a sick person or an exceedingly elderly individual that they read the Torah, that is only for standing up, leaning. But your mamashi sitting on a wheelchair, that he's not willing to be matir. And if you have a person that is mishutak, in other words, he cannot stand even with support, with help, but you want to give him an aliyah. You don't want to read the Torah, be the Baal Koreh, but he wants to get an aliyah. In that case, Haravadia was willing to be lenient b'shat hadachak, when you have no other choice, and this person is needs to get an aliyah and whatnot. In that case, he was lenient to give him an aliyah, but not official Baal Koreh of the Beit Knesset. Ach lo yisha'en al hamapasha al hashulchan shetashmish kedushahu. Now, if you have, depending on when you have the Ashkenazi or Sephardi bimas, if you have the Sefer Torah of the Ashkenazim, the Sefer Torah itself sits on the bima, because they don't have a wooden box cover like the Sfaradim do. So therefore, the mapa, the cover of the bima, is directly serving the klaf of Sefer Torah. The klaf of Sefer Torah sits on it. That halachically makes, and we're going to discuss these halachot is upcoming in Siman Kuf Nun Aleph and on, that cover of the bima becomes tashmish kedusha. You cannot use tashmish kedusha for yourself, so you can't lean on that mapa if you want to lean on the bima. But the Sephardi bimas are more lenient because the box really is tashmish kedusha, and the glass or the mapa on top of the bima becomes tashmish, the tashmish kedusha. It becomes another level removed, and therefore it will be fine. So again, this is overly simplified because there are those leniencies that could be applied over here, but again, something to be mindful of, at least for the Ashkenazi Sifrei Torah and Bimas, the way it is done. It's not just Ashkenazim, even by some of the Moroccan communities, they have the minhag of having the Sefer Torah outside a box, and they do it basically the same way as the Ashkenazim. So it's something to be mindful of. So says the Mishna Berura, ach lo yishan al pasha al hashulchan tashmish kedusha ela al hashulchan atzmo. You should do it on the shulchan, the bima itself, not on the mapa that's on it. And again, as we mentioned, for us is different because we have the box, and that's the tashmish kedusha, and therefore you could lean on the bima if you would need to. And there's no problem because that's already considered tashmish, and that's the halakha that we're going to discuss later on in Siman Kuf Nun Dalet. Really, it's going to be in halachot of tashmish kedusha. We are Be'ezrat Hashem going to continue this in the days to come.